Welcome back to The Problem With, where we break down the issues people love to argue about, but rarely take the time to actually understand. I'm your host, Luis, and today, oh man, we're talking about college sports, more specifically, NIL. That's right, name, image, and likeness. Now, I already know some of you are coming in hot. Maybe you think it's about time these players got paid for everything they bring to the table. Or maybe you're sitting there shaking your head, thinking NIL is destroying college sports as we know it. Either way, let's talk about it. This one's been on my mind for a while. I love sports, the rivalries, the energy, the tradition, that Saturday morning feeling when you hear the fight song and your whole city's buzzing. That's magic. But let's not kid ourselves. College sports, especially at the Division I level, have become a big business. We're talking billion-dollar TV deals, merch flying off the shelves, stadiums packed with 80,000 fans. It's a machine. And for decades, the only people not getting a check were the players. The ones putting their bodies on the line. The ones whose jerseys were selling out of the stores. Coaches were making millions. Schools were raking in revenue. And athletes were supposed to smile and be grateful for a meal swipe and some tuition. NIL flipped that. And some folks really didn't like it. But here's the thing. This system didn't suddenly become corrupt with NIL. It's always been messy. Athletes were getting paid before NIL. Just not legally. Let me walk you through some of the biggest pre-NIL scandals, just to put things in perspective. In 2005, Reggie Bush, USC's golden boy, Heisman winner, future NFL star, got caught in a major scandal. His family allegedly received nearly $300,000 in cash, gifts, and even a house from a marketing agent. The result? Reggie had to give up his Heisman. USC lost scholarships, and the program was gutted. But let's be real. He was the face of college football. Everyone profited of him, except him. Then there's the University of Miami and the Nevin Shapiro scandal in 2011. This dude was full-on scam artist turned booster who was funding a lifestyle for players that looked more like a hip-hop music video. Yachts, hotels, suites, jewelry, even prostitutes. It was wild, and it was happening for years before anyone stopped it. But if we're talking OG scandals, we gotta bring up SMU, Southern Methodist University. Back in the 80s, they were paying players openly. Not just boosters, but actual school officials were involved in writing checks. The NCAA told them to stop. SMU said, "Nah, we're good," and kept going. So in 1987, the NCAA hit them with the harshest punishment in history, the death penalty. They canceled the entire football season. That program was never the same again until recently. Then we have Cam Newton. Yeah, in 2010, there were reports that his father asked Mississippi State for about $180,000 for Cam to play there. Auburn ended up with him, and while they dodged NCAA sanctions, the headlines were a circus, and the controversy never really died down. And it wasn't just football. Let's talk hoops. In 2017, the FBI dropped the hammer on programs like Louisville and Arizona. Coaches were caught on wiretaps. Shoe companies were funneling money to recruits' families. It wasn't a college basketball scandal. It was a criminal investigation. And all this while athletes were still being told they were amateurs who couldn't even accept a free meal. So no, NIL didn't break college sports. It didn't ruin anything. What it did was finally shine a light on a system that has been shady for years and say, maybe the players deserve to eat too. Alright, now we laid the groundwork. Let's actually talk about what NIL is, how it works, who's winning, who's losing, and why it's got old school America so damn mad.
Well, I certainly, like I think many people, understand the need for people to pay attention to and be concerned about the welfare of student athletes. That's what the NCAA was created for 100 years ago, and that's what we keep our attention on. But I don't think that unionizing student athletes and turning them into unionized employees of universities is a way to improve their success. So no, we're not particularly.
All right, y'all. Before we get them to the money deals and the Instagram endorsements, we gotta take a hard look at why NIL even had to happen in the first place. Because this wasn't just some cool new idea the NCAA had one day. Nah, this was a correction, a reckoning. NIL was born out of decades of control, exploitation, and a whole lot of folks getting rich while the actual athletes were stuck with nothing. So let's start with where it all began. The NCAA was created in 1906, and no, not because someone wanted to make sports more fair. It came after a season where 18 players died playing college football. Sport was brutal. Helmet technology didn't exist yet. Rules were chaotic, and schools were basically just throwing guys on the field like gladiators. President Teddy Roosevelt saw it happening and stepped in. He basically told college leaders, "If y'all don't fix this, I'll shut the whole thing down." That led to the formation of NCAA, but even back then, they weren't thinking about fairness for players, they were thinking about control. Over time, they built this whole philosophy around amateurism, that athletes should play for the love of the game, not for money, and sure, that sounds sweet, but it became a weapon. It gave the NCAA cover to keep athletes unpaid while their schools cashed multi-million-dollar checks. Now, here's something a lot of people don't know. The term student athlete, that wasn't a compliment, it was a legal strategy. I was reading this article in The Atlantic by historian Taylor Branch, and it's called The Shame of College Sports. Branch explains how in the 1950s, a college player named Ray Dennison died from a head injury while playing football. His wife tried to file for workers' comp, like anyone would if their spouse died on the job. But the school's lawyers stepped in and said, well, actually he wasn't an employee. He was a student athlete. And the court agreed. That's when NCAA started intentionally using that phrase, not to honor the players, but to legally protect themselves. So right there, the system wasn't built to support players. It was built to shield schools from having to care for them. And over the years, it just keeps getting worse. Let's talk about Inky Johnson, a name every college sports fan should know. He played for Tennessee in 2006, projected to be a first-round NFL pick. Then in one game, he took a hit that left his right arm permanently paralyzed. Career over, millions gone. And guess what the NCAA did for him? Nothing. No insurance coverage, no compensation, just thanks for playing. And Inky was not alone. A 2020 ESPN report showed that less than half of Power 5 schools guarantee medical coverage after graduation. If a player gets injured playing for your school and then graduates, a lot of time they're just on their own. Meanwhile, coaches are flying on private jets, cashing $8 million checks, and the guys actually out there bleeding on the turf don't even get health coverage. That's just messed up. It's shameful. And then, while all this was happening in the open, you had a whole underground economy happening in the shadows. I'm talking cars, apartments, duffel bags full of cash, boosters sliding money under the tables at IHOP after recruiting visits. And yeah, some of it sounds like conspiracy stuff, but it wasn't a secret in the sports world. One of the wildest examples was the SMU scandal in the 80s. I already mentioned that earlier, but I'm going to keep diving into it. And I'm just talking a few violations. SMU had a full-blown slush fund run by boosters. And even school officials, players were getting paid after the NCAA had already punished them. They were like, yeah, we're still doing it. Eventually, the NCAA had to say enough and drop the death penalty. they shut down SMU's entire 1987 season. But here's the truth. SMU just got caught. Big-time programs like USC, Miami, Ohio State, Alabama, they were doing it too. They just had better lawyers and quieter boosters. The teams with the most money always had the best recruiting classes. And it wasn't just because of tradition. Now let's talk about the myth of the full ride. I think people love to bring up when athletes speak out, but they're getting a free education. Okay, let's break that down. First off, most athletic scholarships are renewed yearly. That means they're not guaranteed for all 4 years. You get hurt, you fall out of favor with the coach, you can be cut. Boom, no more scholarship, no more school. You're just done. And on top of that, those scholarships don't cover everything. They're hidden fees, housing shortages, food insecurity, and players aren't allowed to have jobs to help cover those gaps. NPR did a whole piece in this on 2015. They interviewed players who were on scholarship but still had to choose between textbooks and dinner. That ain't a free ride. That's barely survival. Let's not forget, these kids are putting in 40 hours or more a week of practice, travel, games, film sessions. That's a job. But they couldn't profit off their own name, image, or brand, while everybody else was getting rich off of it. So why did the system last so long? Why didn't someone blow the whistle and shut it down earlier? Well, there are 3 main reasons. 1, control. The NCAA loved the power by calling players amateurs. They didn't have to pay them, and they didn't have to protect them. 2, fear. Athletes were scared to speak up. One wrong move, and you were benched, or cut, or labeled a distraction. 3, and let's be real, this whole model made everyone else rich. Coaches, ADs, commissioners, TV networks, all swimming in money while athletes were fighting for meal stipends. And every time someone tried to question it, the NCAA came out with their favorite line: "We're just protecting the integrity of the game." No, you were protecting your wallet. NIL didn't ruin college sports. It saved it from itself. It didn't introduce corruption. It forced the system to admit the corruption had always been there. College athletes were never just students. They were workers, entertainers, revenue generators. They filled stadiums, moved merchandise, drove media deals. And for decades, they got nothing back. So when the media started digging, when players started speaking out, and when courts and lawmakers finally stepped in, the system cracked. And up next, we're going to talk through the moment that crack became a collapse. Lawsuits like O'Bannon and Alston, and the state laws that forced the NCAA to finally throw in the towel. Stick with me.
Former college basketball player Ed O'Bannon has been waiting 5 years for his day in court, and today he will get it. O'Bannon's lawsuit against the NCAA goes before a federal judge in Oakland. The suit seeks to end the NCAA's control over the rights to college athletes' names, images, and likenesses. Right now, college players must sign a waiver relinquishing those rights, while the universities make all that money.
So now that we laid out how messed up the system was for college athletes, the injuries, the money, the under-the-table hypocrisy, let's talk about what finally made it crack. NIL didn't happen because the NCAA had a change of heart. It wasn't some feel-good story about doing the right thing. No, they were forced into it by lawsuits, public pressure, and state lawmakers who got tired of waiting for change. And it started with a name you might have heard, Ed O'Bannon. Back in 2009, Ed O'Bannon, a former UCLA basketball star and Final Four MVP, was just chilling one day when he saw himself in EA Sports NCAA basketball. His exact face, number, signature jump shot, everything. And he realized, wait, they're still using my name and image, and I haven't seen a dime? So he sued the NCAA, arguing that college athletes should have the right to profit off their name, image, and likeness. And honestly, he had a point. This lawsuit became huge, and the judge agreed with him. Kind of. In 2014, the court ruled that the NCAA was violating antitrust laws. The judge said the NCAA rules unreasonably restrain trade in the market for student-athlete services. That's legal talk for you're making billions of these players while pretending they are amateurs. But the ruling didn't go all the way. The court said athletes should get some compensation, like $5,000 per year, but not full salaries. Still, the damage was done. The NCAA's legal armor has been pierced. Then came the big one, NCAA versus Alston in 2021. This case wasn't even about players getting rich. It was about just allowing schools to give athletes education-related benefits. Things like laptops, internships, or grad school tuition. And the NCAA fought it. They were like, nope, can't do that. Amateurism. And the case went all the way to the Supreme Court. And you know what the Supreme Court said? You're out of your damn mind. Okay, they didn't say that exactly. But they did rule against the NCAA in a 9-0 decision. Unanimous. That usually never happens. Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who's not exactly known for being radical progressive, wrote a separate opinion that just tore the NCAA to pieces. He said, "The NCAA is not above the law. Nowhere else in America can businesses get away with agreeing not to pay their workers a fair market rate." He called the NCAA model flatly illegal, which Kavanaugh had that spine nowadays. That was the moment everything changed. The Supreme Court told the NCAA, "You better fix this or we will." And the NCAA, they folded like a lawn chair. Now, here's the other half of the story. While all of that legal drama was playing out, the states weren't sitting around. They started passing their own laws to protect college athletes. In 2009, California dropped the first bomb, the Fair Pay to Play Act. It was signed into law by Governor Gavin Newsom, and he even signed it on LeBron James' show, The Shop. That bill said college athletes in California could profit off their names, image, and likeness, whether the NCAA liked it or not. And once California passed that, it was like a domino effect. Florida, Texas, Georgia, Illinois, all started writing up their own NIL bills. They said, "We're not going to let our athletes fall behind while y'all keep playing gatekeeper." By mid-2021, over 20 states had passed or introduced NIL laws. And here's the thing, the NCAA couldn't stop them. If they didn't act fast, they were about to have 50 different state policies to deal with. So on July 1st, 2021, the NCAA gave up. They announced they were suspending the rules. And just like that, athletes across the country were allowed to start earning money off NIL. That's how quick it happened. One day, athletes couldn't even accept free tacos from boosters. The next, they were signing deals with Gatorade, Beats by Dre, and freaking Racing Canes. And here's the wild part. The world didn't end. College football didn't collapse. March Madness still popped off. Athletes just finally had the right to profit off their own name. You know what this whole thing reminds me of? It's like the NCAA was standing on a house of cards, pretending it was a castle. And when people started pulling the right cards, a lawsuit here, state law there, the whole thing came crashing down. The courts called out a lie. The state said, "We're done waiting." And the public finally started seeing through the Amateurism Act. NIL wasn't a scandal. It was long overdue. a rebalancing of power. And honestly, the athletes had earned it 1,000 times over. Coming up next, we're going to take a look at the current landscape of NIL. Who's winning, who's cashing in, and what this new era actually looks like in action. Spoiler alert, it ain't just the quarterbacks.
This fall, CU Buff Nico Magri got a call that changed his life.
When I got it, I'm like, oh my God, it's kind of like, this is insane. I was speechless.
Magri, a walk-on graduate senior, had been awarded an NIL deal.
As a walk-on, you don't necessarily get as much recognition.
All right, now that we've broken down the history and the fallout, let's talk about what this whole NIL world actually looks like. Because this isn't just about kids getting paid, it's about college sports finally shifting in ways we're still trying to wrap our heads around. And I'll say this up front, I genuinely believe that NIL is helping to balance college sports, not just in the bank account, but in the competitive landscape too. Shaking up who gets to win, who gets to be seen, and who gets to build something beyond the game. For example, Colorado this past year, they were on borderline Big 12 championship contenders. That wasn't happening before NIL, also because of Deion Sanders. However, yeah, the top dogs are cashing in. Let's not pretend like that's not happening. Bronny James is the poster boy for NIL. He had close to $6 million in valuation before he played a college minute at USC. That comes with the name. Yeah, but also with the exposure, the media, the machine, and the fan base. Livy Dunn over at LSU is another massive success story. She got this look, the skill, the social media presence, and the checks to match. Reports say that she's making up to $3 million a year through partnerships with Vuori, American Eagle, and others. She's also using her platform to talk about the value of women athletes and why we deserve visibility. Now, yeah, these stories are flashy, but they're the tip of the iceberg. Where NIL is really exciting is what's doing for athletes who never had this kind of shot. Let's talk about Byron Perkins from Hampton University, an HBCU athlete, cornerback, and the first openly gay player in HBCU football. He signed a deal with Panini America for his own trading cards. That's historic. That's visibility that matters. Or Riley Turner, a black woman playing soccer at UCLA. She became Nike's first NIL athlete. She wasn't a 5-star football recruit or a blue-chip hooper. She's out here breaking barriers, showing that girls, especially girls of color, belong in this space. These aren't just endorsements. These are statements. It's about damn time. And yo, some of the most important NIL deals don't even come with commas. They're small, local ones. Walk-ons who used to be invisible are now getting local business partnerships. Athletes are doing meet and greets at hometown barbershops, running youth camps, starting merch lines. This isn't just about fame, it's about freedom. $500 from a local sponsor might not mean much to a Power 5 booster, but to a student athlete, that's groceries, that's rent, that's helping mom pay bills, that's real life. And in a world where players used to get punished for accepting a bagel, this is progress. Now let's talk competition, because this is where NIL is really shaking things up and where I think the change is going to be long term. Before NIL, if you weren't a top recruit, your path was basically hope for a spot at a big school, maybe transfer later, sit out a year, and maybe get a chance to shine. But now, a kid can say, you know what, I'm going to go to a mid-major, get reps, build my brand, and still get paid. You're seeing athletes skip blue blood programs in favor of places where they'll play now. or still secure NIL money. That's why I say NIL is balancing college sports. It's giving power to the athlete, to where the fit is right, not just where the tradition is strongest. You're seeing money parity in recruiting. You're more mobility through the transfer portal and more visibility for schools that used to get left out. Programs like Jackson State, Coastal Carolina, and Appalachian State, Colorado as mentioned earlier, are seeing surges in attention and sometimes funding because NIL allows athletes to chase both opportunity and income. Another reason I love NIL, it's teaching athletes business. The Cavender twins didn't just hoop, they built a TikTok brand and turned into a media company. Boost Mobile, WWE, and more line up for the partnerships. And they weren't chasing NBA dreams. They were building post-college careers while still in school. Same goes for players like Jada Williams. It's like still already think about branding, messaging, and how she wants to be seen. That's power. And honestly, athletes learning to be CEOs of themselves, that's one of the most empowering things I've seen come from this. Now, let's be real. NIL isn't perfect. You got schools creating collectives, basically booster-funded organizations that pull cash to make the school more appealing. It's not technically pay for play, but we all know what's going on. Some of the biggest schools still have the biggest wallets. So it's not like the playing field's fully even, but the options are more open, and that's the key. Before NIL, your talent had to flow through the same few pipelines. Now, talent's going where it wants to go, and the money's following it. NIL is changing the business of college sports, but it's also changing the culture. It's giving athletes, especially women, athletes of color, athletes in overlooked sports, a chance to say, I'm here, I matter, and I can build something that's mine. And yeah, it's leveling the playing field in more ways than one. It's bringing competition back to programs that were written off. It's making schools rethink how they support the athletes, and it's giving students the tools to the bigger than a scoreboard. That's why I support it, not just because athletes deserve to be paid, which they absolutely do, but because this is a chance to rewrite the power dynamics that have always tilted one way. Coming up next, we're talking the backlash, because anytime power shifts, there are always going to be folk who can't stand it. Coaches, fans, old school media. We're going to get into why they're really mad. It's not about the integrity of the game.
That's my major concern, the combination of pay for play, free agency, and how that impacts development. And I can attest that I've had two NFL coaches tell me, and this is a football deal because they're concerned about the football part, that the players come to them less developed, with more entitlements and less resiliency to overcome adversity. We've worked so hard for the last 20 years to improve graduation rate, to improve health care for players, to have mental health care for players. All the things that we work so hard to improve on, we're going to start seeing slide in the wrong direction because we've created an environment that really does not promote personal development or that is going to create success for their future.
Okay, let's talk about it. Because even after NIL became legal, even after athletes started signing deals, building brands, and finally making money off themselves, some folks are still acting like college sports is going to hell in a handbasket. And this backlash, oh, it's loud. From millionaire coaches to ESPN talking heads to the back of my day crowd in the comment sections. Everybody's got something to say, just like myself. But let's keep it real. It's not about protecting the purity of the game. It's about power. NIL shifted power towards the players. And a lot of folks who used to run the show, they're not handling well. Let's start with the coaches. You probably heard about the Saban-Jimbo feud in 2022. Alabama head coach Nick Saban accused Texas A&M of buying their whole recruiting class, saying, and I quote, A&M bought every player on their team, made a deal for name, image, and likeness. Mind you, this is the same Saban who dominated recruiting for over a decade. But now that another school can offer legal compensation, suddenly it's a moral crisis? Jimbo Fisher clapped back hard, saying, quote, some people think they're God. Go dig into how God did his deal. Translation, Nick's been playing the same game, just quietly. But it didn't stop there. Fast forward to 2024, and Saban's taking it up to another level. He literally joined Donald Trump on the campaign trail, backing him for president. And the two of them bonded over how they think NIL is destroying college football. So now, NIL is not just a sports issue, it's become political. The same people who've been benefiting from the labor of unpaid athletes are now linking up with politicians to re-regulate the athletes. Let that sink in. And of course, we cannot forget there's Dabo Swinney, who's been anti-NIL from day one. Back in 2020, before NIL was even officially approved, he said, if we professionalize college athletics, I'll go do something else. There's enough entitlement in this world as it is. Fast forward to 2022, and instead of walking away, like he said, Dabo signed a $115 million extension, becoming one of the highest paid coaches in the country. He didn't quit, he didn't leave. He just kept cashing checks while calling athletes entitled for getting a piece of the pie. The hypocrisy. It's wild. These coaches aren't upset about NIL. They're upset because players don't need them like they used to. Then there's the back of my day crowd. You know the type. Players used to do it for the love of the game. Now it's just about the money. These kids are soft. Well, here's the truth. A lot of these folks never liked professional athletes neither, because pro athletes have freedom. They choose where to go. They walk away from bad deals. They speak out on social issues, and that kind of agency, it bothers people. Especially when it's a young black athletes controlling their own brand, setting boundaries, or turning down big name schools to bet on themselves. They'll cheer for a kid on Saturday as long as he keeps quiet. But the second that same kid signs a deal, launches a merch line, or uses his platform to talk about justice, he's arrogant, or worse, a problem. And don't get me started on the double standard. I love Livy Dunn, what she's done, but even when she signed a multi-million-dollar deal, she's considered savvy and marketable. When a black quarterback starts a podcast or a clothing line, it's a distraction or greed. That's not coincidence. That's bias. Plain and simple. Then we have the media. The media has been throwing gasoline on this too. Paul Feinbaum, Tim Brando, and the whole lineup of talking heads keep calling NIL the Wild West. Like suddenly we're in danger because a linebacker from Iowa is getting $10,000 to promote a smoothie shop? But where were these same concerns when schools were spending $100 million on locker rooms with waterfalls? When coaches were getting $10 million a year contracts? When the NCAA was making billions off of March Madness while athletes went home hungry? They didn't say a word. But now that the money's hitting the hands of the players, now it's chaos? It's not a crisis, it's a correction. And let's not forget, the NCAA got exposed bad. First with Ed O'Bannon, then with the Supreme Court's unanimous ruling on NCAA v. Alston, which called the entire model flatly illegal in another industry. And yet, here they are in 2024, lobbying Congress to pass a federal NIL law that, surprise, surprise, will give them the power to regulate deals, limit athletes, and restore balance, which is code for put athletes back in their place. So let's stop pretending. The anger around NIL, it's not about protecting the game. It's about protecting the gatekeepers. Before NIL, athletes had to stay silent, sit out transfers, hope for exposure, and wait for the draft. Now, they can get paid in year one, move to a better opportunity, and build a brand before the pros even call. That's got some people, especially those who benefited from the old system, shook. They're not mad about players getting money. They're mad because the players don't need them anymore. So yeah, some folks are still mad about NIL. But let's be clear, NIL didn't ruin anything. It just exposed the truth. College sports were never pure. They were just profitable for everyone except the players. Now, the players have power. And the people who spent decades hoarding it, they're scrambling to get it back. But it's too late. Coming up to the final segment, we're talking about the future. What happens if Congress steps in? What's the NCAA trying to do behind closed doors? And most importantly, how do we keep NIL in the hands of the players, not the next generation of gatekeepers? Let's talk strategy, risk, and what real equity looks like. Next. Alright, everybody. We made it to the final stretch. So far, we unpacked the NCAA's broken system, the lawsuits, the under-the-table deals, and the backlash from coaches and the media. But now, let's talk about where this thing is going. Because while NIL has been a game changer, the fight isn't over. In fact, it might just be getting started. Let's be real. NIL isn't perfect. The rollout has been messy, inconsistent, and in some cases, flat out shady. Some players are making life-changing money, others are still barely scraping by. There are no real guardrails yet, and that's left a lot of room for confusion, exploitation, and bad faith actors. But despite all of that, it's still better than what we had before. No question. Right now, there's a big push in Washington to create a national NIL law. On the surface, that sounds good because, yeah, every state having its own rules, it's kind of chaotic. But here's the problem. Most of these federal NIL bills, they don't protect the players. They protect the NCAA and the same old institutions that built this mess in the first place. Take Senator Tommy Tuberville. Yeah, the same Tommy Tuberville who made millions coaching unpaid college athletes. Let's be real, he wasn't even that good of a coach. He coasted off talent, bailed on his teams more than once, and still managed to walk away with a fat contract. Now, he's one of the loudest voices pushing a federal NIL bill that will restrict how much athletes can make, force them to report their earnings to the schools, and even let those schools veto deals they don't like. Let me get this straight. This man profited for years of a system that gave him everything and gave his players nothing. And now he's worried about too much freedom. Please, that's not leadership. That's gatekeeping. Also, he's a representative for the Party of Freedom. Hypocrite much? Let's be honest, Tuberville isn't alone. He just says the quiet part out loud. The NCAA is lobbying hard for something like this. They say they want uniformity, but what they really want is control. They want a version of NIL where the money still flows up, not down, where athletes still have to ask for permission to make a move. If we're not careful, Congress is going to serve NIL right back to the silver platter to the people who mismanaged it in the first place, all under the guise of protecting the game. But who's protecting the players? There's another risk here too, because as much as NIL is about freedom and fairness, it's also becoming a business, and we know how business works in this country. If there's money to be made, someone's gonna try and take a cut.
look, I think it's the Wild West right now. You've got a situation where athletes are engaged in a fight for the top bidder. Many of them are not remaining with their schools. They're not necessarily loyal to their schools. They switch school through the transfer portal year after year after year. And I think we're at a real risk of seeing college athletics permanently damaged, of seeing a handful of giant super schools with all the money, recruiting all the top talent, and the rest of the schools being left in the dust. And that's not good for the fans. That's not good for the sport. And I think there's a real need for Congress to act and set some uniform rules.
Already, we got third-party collectives, shady agents, and middlemen who don't always have the players' best interests at heart. We got high school kids being promised six-figure deals that disappear when they get hurt. And we got schools using NIL as a recruiting weapon, which opens the door for corruption all over again. There's also growing concern that NIL is turning into a pay-to-play model, where only the athletes at major programs in major markets get a real shot at making money. Smaller schools, non-revenue sports, women's teams, they're still fighting for scraps while the powerhouses double down. And let's not ignore how easily the system can be manipulated. You got NIL collectives fronting as charities to funnel money to athletes. You've got boosters leveraging NIL to get access and influence. You got high school athletes reclassifying just to chase early deals before they even played college snap. This whole thing can easily morph into something just exploitative as it came before it, only dress up in more modern language. The same inequities, the same gatekeeping, just under a new banner. And if you think the NCAA's a big-time athletic departments are going to be the ones to stop it, think again. The only people who constantly had players' best interests in mind are the players themselves, and a few honest advocates in their corner. If we don't build strong safeguards now, NIL could go the same way as every other system where money and power mix, leaving the same kids it was supposed to help right back at the bottom. We got a chance here to build something better, but it won't happen unless we're willing to admit that just giving athletes the right to be paid isn't the same as protecting that right. We need infrastructure. We need regulation that's built for the players, not to control them. And we need accountability for the adults who are already trying to twist this thing into another cash grab. If we're not careful, we'll just end up swamping on one exploitative system for another. And this time, it will be even harder to dismantle, because they'll say, but look, we're paying them now. Yeah, but at what cost? So what do we do? How do we keep NIL player focus, player power, and player first? What does real equity even look like in a system that was never built for fairness to begin with? First off, we need real education. And I'm not just talking about a PowerPoint or an orientation. Athletes need deep, ongoing training in contract law, taxes, branding, negotiation, and long-term financial planning. We should be treating NIL literacy like we treat lifting weights, a core part of the program. Shout out to schools like Ohio State and Texas that are actually investing in NIL education. But let's be honest, every school should be doing this. Second, we need transparency. That means open access to information about what deals are being made, what the terms are, and who's involved. If you can post coaching contracts online, you can do the same for NIL deals. This will help players know what's fair, prevent exploitation, and even push the market to evolve in healthier ways. Third, and this is big, we need athletes at the table, not just on the panels or in focus groups, but in the rooms where policy is written. If lawmakers are crafting NIL rules, then current and former athletes need to be involved. You can't make rules for people without listening to the people those rules affect. Real equity also means addressing the gaps. Women athletes deserve just as much as an opportunity as men. Athletes at HBCUs deserve the same resources and deal access as those at Power 5 schools. We need to close the divide. And that starts with deliberately investing in communities that have been historically underfunded, and overlooked. And finally, equity means protecting the long game. Because this isn't just about what the athletes can make right now. It's about building a system where they can thrive after sports. NIL should be a stepping stone, not a one-time cash grab. So yeah, real equity is layered, is structural, and it's uncomfortable for those who benefited from the old model. But if we want this thing to last, if we want to truly transform college sports, we got to start centering the people who actually play the game. Look, NIL might not be perfect. It might be messy, but it's better than what we had. Way better. And let me say this. I didn't play college sports. I didn't put my body on the line for a scholarship or grind on the field for free. But I'm a military veteran. I served my country, and in return, I got a free education. I had a housing allowance. I had benefits that helped me stay afloat while I pursued my future. And not once did anyone tell me I was entitled for receiving that support. So why is it when a college athlete tries to get paid for their own talent, their own work, it suddenly becomes a problem? This is about more than just money. It's about respect. It's about finally recognizing that college athletes are workers, that their time, the effort, and their bodies have built billion-dollar empires, and they deserve something in return. For the first time, athletes are not just being seen. They're being paid. They're making decisions for themselves. They're saying no to exploitation. They're building futures that don't rely on making it to the pros. They have agency. They have leverage. And they're rewriting what it means to be a college athlete. And that scares people because it means less control. It means less silence. It means that the same systems that once took advantage of athletes now have to answer to them. We have to keep the pressure on. We have to keep asking the hard questions. Who gets to profit? Who makes the rules? And who actually benefits when we say, love the game? Because what good is tradition if it only works for a few? What good is college pride if it's built on the backs of unpaid labor? We have to question the institutions that taught us to cheer for the jersey, even when the players wearing it they were being exploited. The NIL era is the new chapter, but it's not the end of the story. We still have a lot of work to do, and the decisions made in the next few years will shape the future of college sports for an entire generation. So to every athlete out there finding their voice, signing their first deal, or just trying to figure out everything, keep going. You deserve this. You earned this. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. This is about equity. It's about justice. And if we do this right, it can be about legacy too. Not just for the players now, but for every young athlete who dreams of a future where their talent is respected and their worth is recognized. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Problem With. I'm Luis, and I'll catch you next time. But before you go, let me ask you the same way I closed our last episode. Do you think this new era of NIL will truly level the playing field? Or are we just watching a new version of the same old game? Hit me up on social media, drop your thoughts, share your stories. And as always, keep questioning the system that claims to serve us, but rarely do.